Welcome back to another episode of The Founder, a show that features entrepreneurs and their early stories of ingenuity, struggle, and perseverance to get their companies off the ground. We do our best to capture the uncensored, uncovered look behind the curtain into what founders really face when getting started. I'm your host, Kallaway. Our founder guest on today's episode has always been an athlete and obsessed with recovery and performance. Growing up in Italy, he spent time as a competitive ski racer, tennis player, and race car driver before jumping into the corporate world as a securities lawyer. After launching and exiting a couple of companies in the renewable energy space, his professional focus came full circle as he rediscovered his passion for optimizing performance. He explored the space and realized the massive opportunity for smarter sleep products to support the rapidly growing quantified self movement. It was at this moment that 8 Sleep was born. Today at 8 Sleep, this founder and his team are the pioneers of sleep fitness. Their tech-enabled mattress, the Pod, has taken the industry by storm as it significantly enhances your sleep quality through thermal regulation. Over the course of the night, the Pod detects your changing body temperature via sensors built into the mattress. Then, the Hub, or external water tank, uses warm and cool water to constantly adjust the temperature of the bed to keep your internal body temperature at the optimal level. This significantly reduces disruptions throughout the night and enables more restful, higher quality sleep. 8 Sleep also has a killer app that you can use to track your vitals, sleep cycles, and overall sleep performance over time. In the last few weeks, they also launched their Pod Pro cover, which adds their patented thermoregulation technology to your existing mattress. While they've made incredible strides already, they're still in the early innings of what's possible in the smart sleep space. And as a special offer for our listeners, I teamed up with the founder to get you 15% off all their products, including the Pod and Pod Pro mattresses, as well as the Pod Pro cover. Just use code Kallaway at checkout or click the link in the description to take advantage. This is an inspiring interview that shines a spotlight on the importance of sleep and an innovative company that is architecting better products for the digital age. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Now introducing the co-founder of 8 Sleep, Matteo Franceschetti. Let's get it. Matteo, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you today. So what I like to do to start these is before we dive into kind of the origin story and your background, I'd love to start with just a snapshot of what 8 Sleep looks like today. Walk us through for people who might not be familiar, what's the mission of the company? Talk about the products you sell a little bit. How big are you in terms of, employees or any KPI you use to measure growth?
We are the first sleep fitness company. So we develop a technology that can improve your sleep performance. In particular, we use thermoregulation. So we change the temperature of your body during the night to improve your sleep. We're based in New York, but we have people all over the US and also in China and Brazil. We have up to 60 people across all these different geographies. And we are backed by some of the largest Silicon Valley investors, including Founders Fund, Khosla Ventures, and Y Combinator. We have raised $65 million today.
Yeah, we're super stoked to get into it and very excited about the space. So I think that'll serve as a really good snapshot. Let's rewind the clock a bit. As fast or as slow as you'd like, give us a walkthrough of your background and life kind of leading up to, I know you've started several companies and been an entrepreneur. So take us through that journey and all the way up to starting 8 Sleep.
Yeah, so I have always been an athlete, in particular when I was a teenager. First, I was a ski racer, then a tennis player, then I also raced with cars. So I have always been into performance and recovery, really squeezing the max you can from your own body. Then, unfortunately, I became a lawyer, and I have been a securities lawyer for quite some time. I worked for the 2 largest law firms in Europe, probably in the world. And then I started 2 companies. The first 2 companies were in renewable energy. So in solar, we were developing large utility scale solar plants. That was my expertise. I had a lot of expertise in finance and project finance, that kind of thing. So the first company was started in Italy, and it was profitable since day one. We never raised money. That's the only way you have to go in Italy for probably 99% of the times. And we sold it. Then I moved to the US. I started substantially the same company with the same co-founder plus an American co-founder. We raised $3.5 million. Then the company got acquired by Panasonic 2 years and a half later. And then is when I started 8 Sleep. There was obviously quite a big jump from solar and renewable energy to sleep. But first, both companies, they were driven from this desire to make the world a better place. One against climate change, and this one to improve health in general. And second is 8 Sleep is really connected to the first years of my own life as an athlete when I was a teenager. And that obsession for body performance and recovery.
Yeah, and we'll get into 8 Sleep, the nuances in a second, but just at like a high level, what are some of the biggest things that you learned from your first 2 forays as a founder and running kind of a startup that helped you in building 8 Sleep initially? I think when I talk to founders, a lot of them are first-time entrepreneurs and blissfully ignorant, essentially, is what they say. They have no idea what they're getting into, and that's probably one of the reasons why they're effective. But for you, it's rare that you've done this before. So what are some of those things you learned that have helped you with the 8 Sleep journey?
So I think both companies, they taught me that it's really hard. I mean, you will go through a lot of tough moments when things they don't work, and the shift can even be weekly. So sometimes you can have a very tough week, and then the following week might be very positive. So there are these sort of cycles. And if you just keep going when it's really tough, then at a certain point, it will bounce back and it will get better. The other thing is the importance of people around you. First, your co-founders, you will go through tough moments and it's like a marriage. And so you really need to trust them and be really picky when you start something with them. And I think I was pretty lucky in all my ventures. And the other one also, the founding team, not just about the founders, but also really these first people that come in and they will help you shape the company. So I would summarize it with the second point is all about people.
Definitely. And then, so before we talk about the product itself, which I think is really cool, talk about just like sleep as a problem. So I think, you've over time have definitely become one of the experts in the space around sleep, and everybody sleeps, but a lot of people are sleeping poorly and they don't know why. So just talk through, some of the things that you've learned about typical sleep habits and what people, are doing wrong.
Yeah, I mean, 1 out of 2 adults have problems to sleep, of different types of problems, but their sleep efficiency and sleep performance is not where it should be. The other thing that really, drove my thoughts at the beginning was, how is it possible that Elon Musk is taking us to Mars and we have technology all over our life, but we still spend a third of our life on a piece of dumb phone? If you think, right, unless you're really sleeping on one of our products, you're still sleeping on the same product that has been used for sure for the past 60 years. Memory foam was invented in 1960, right? And it's still the main selling point of a lot of mattress brands. It does not make any sense. The internet was not existing. It was just 10 years, 20 years after the Second World War. And so when you start looking at that, you start understanding that there is a lot of room for efficiencies. And that is where our vision comes from. So our vision is based on 2 pillars. The first one is, how can we compress your sleep? So what if in 10 years from now, you could sleep only 6 hours and get more rest than when you were sleeping 8 hours? There are a couple of different ways we will achieve that. But the bottom line is humanity didn't improve sleep for the past 2,000 years. And finally, it's time to do that and to leverage technology to achieve it. The second thing is, even if you sleep 6 hours, it's obviously much less. You're gaining 2 hours back of life, but 6 hours is still a reasonable amount. And so how can we maximize that time? The way we maximize that time is by transforming your bed in a medical grade device that can track everything about your health. So what if going to bed becomes more valuable than going to the doctor for a checkup? These are the 2 things we want to achieve: compressing your sleep and transforming your bed in a medical grade device that monitors your health every single day.
Yeah, and talk about the product. So the sleep pod today, it has thermal regulation, which for people who don't know, it basically auto adjusts the temperature up or down depending on how your body's responding. And then it of course also has sensors all throughout to actually measure that data as you're sleeping, right? Talk about where it started and where it is today and what that evolution looked like and kind of how the product works nuts and bolts wise.
Yeah, exactly. So thermoregulation is the current core feature. And the reason is because temperature is the biggest factor impacting your sleep. And we have this feature called smart temperature. You can think of smart temperature like what autopilot is for Tesla. So it's something that keeps evolving, is software based and it's cloud based. So you buy the pod today, and the smart temperature will be better tomorrow, will be better in a month and 3 months, and it will just be software updates. And the bottom line is based on your data and your biometrics, we adjust the temperature to help you fall asleep faster, to get more deep sleep and more REM, and to also wake up more refreshed. And the reason is first, your body temperature already changes during the night. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We are just enhancing a natural change that is already occurring into your body. Second, when you hear people saying, oh, you should sleep at 68 degrees in your bedroom, that is true, but is also false, meaning that 68 degrees might be good at a certain point of the night. Maybe it's right for 1 minute, maybe it's right for 1 hour, but I can guarantee you that it's not going to be right for 8 hours of sleep. And the reason is because your body temperature is changing. And so the temperature around you needs to change accordingly. And that is what our technology does.
And so over the time that especially the thermal regulation has been rolled out in the product, you've been collecting data, and I imagine have one of the largest, if not the largest, like sleep databases on non-medical patients. What have you learned from people that are using it, right? Like how much better is it than a legacy option?
Yeah. There are two types of data. There are external clinical studies and our own data. There are studies that prove that through thermoregulation, in particular cooling, you can fall asleep up to 20% faster, and you can get up to 20% more deep sleep. Our data shows also that with our product, you could get up to 30% more restful sleep, which means less wake ups in the middle of the night, less toss and turns, and deeper or more restful sleep through REM. The interesting thing is also for you to fall asleep, temperature needs to be just right, meaning that if it's too cold, your heart rate accelerates because it needs to warm up the extremities. So you want to fall asleep in a bed that is fresh, but is not too cold, or you wouldn't fall asleep. As soon as you fall asleep, and in deep sleep is when the temperature should be the coldest. And based on scientific studies, cooling during deep sleep will help you get more of that. But then, as in the second part of the night, which is when you start getting more REM, then is what you need is not cooling anymore, but is what is called thermoneutrality. Meaning, when you are in REM, your brain deactivates a lot of body functionalities, including the ability for the body to self-regulate its own temperature. And so if it's too cold, it wouldn't let you fall into REM because you could potentially die if you were in a storm. So it's key that our technology keeps you into this thermoneutrality situation, so the brain understands that the environment is safe and you can get the REM sleep.
Yeah, that's really fascinating about the REM piece, right? I bet a lot of people don't know that temperature kind of like parabolic is what you need. You know, when you think about future features, I think sometimes, especially with tech-enabled wellness products, people fall into like, what's next? And what you guys have is so much better than the legacy option. Is it a matter of just continuing to make small tweaks and just building the data set over time? Or are there other stepwise features that you're working on right now that are kind of in the roadmap for the next couple of years?
Both. So obviously, right now, number one focus is to keep making smart temperature smarter. So to be able to auto-adjust temperature for you in order to optimize your sleep performance. But to really achieve what we want to achieve in terms of sleep compression, we need to control the whole environment. And so we want to control light, noise, oxygen, humidity. For oxygen, you probably have heard of athletes sleeping in altitude tents. So what if we can replicate that at a reasonable and affordable cost, and every night you were sleeping in a sort of consumer-friendly altitude tent that would help your blood to catch more oxygen?
That's fascinating. Yeah, I feel like there's, as you mentioned, there's a lot of elements that go into it. It's not just the sleep surface. And I feel like they're relatively unknown and there's not a lot of solutions. Like there's a lot of manual bits and pieces that people are using today, but nothing really integrated and data driven. So that's super interesting. So a topic I'd love to talk about on the show is like customer acquisition, marketing, and growth. And so I'd love to spend a little bit of time on that. Firstly, around customer acquisitions, when you think about kind of who are the core segments that are buying the product and were buying it initially, what does that look like today? And how do you see that shifting over time as you broaden the base of people buying?
Yeah. So right now there is a very interesting dynamic happening in our favor, meaning in the at home fitness is growing extremely quickly, right? People adopting Peloton, Tonal, Tempo, Mirror, or even apps like Future, right? And so there is a lot of competition in the fitness space, but there is no company that is speaking the same language to this audience from a sleep perspective. So someone who takes care of their sleep, but the audience is exactly the same. That is us. And that is why we talk about what is called sleep fitness. And we think of sleep as a sort of fitness because it's fundamental for your health, it's fundamental for your recovery and for your well-being. So our audience is anyone who buys a home fitness device and is health conscious, 25 to 45 years old.
Gotcha. And as you try to expand, go 5, 10, 20x over time, do you see that there's enough of people in that demographic slice to, there's plenty of demand out there to capture, or will the product suite change, evolve, new things will be released on your side to be able to capture a more kind of mass consumer audience?
I think there are opportunities in on both sides. I think we will see us releasing products that are even more expensive because they will deliver a new extra additional features. At the same time, we will also ship new products that are more affordable and maybe are the perfect way for the long tail of this audience to become part of the family.
When you think about kind of your overall marketing and growth strategy, you look at the channels that you've overemphasized, underemphasized resources and time. What has worked so far to reach that audience? I have a guess, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, what has worked based on the data, and what have you tried that you're optimistic about that just ended up not working as well?
A theory that I always look at is the theory of the 7 touch points. In particular, for a product like ours, that is it's really expensive, right? So is not an impulsive purchase that you just see on Facebook and you say, "Oh, this is cool," and you just spend $3,000 on a pod. At the same time, our data shows that it takes usually between 2 and 4 weeks for our customers to buy. So they go through this period during which they do their due diligence, they consider the product, they discuss it with their partner. And so we are really focused on surrounding you with second voice stories of other people that prove you that the product is legitimate, that it works, and that we will have your back also in terms of customer support if anything goes wrong, which is not expected. But if you spend $3,000 on a D2C product, you want to know that customer support, these people are going to be there for you. So obviously, in terms of channels, digital is the one that works well and is also the easiest to control, right? So obviously, Facebook and Google, the Google platform, so Google search, YouTube, and so on. Podcasts, they work really well for us because again, it's one of the 7 touch points where sometimes we might be advertising or they just might listen to me talking about the company and our vision. On Twitter, completely organic, meaning I'm really active there, and we have a lot of people sharing their love every day. And so what is happening is sometimes I see customers or potential customers just going on Twitter and say, "I'm thinking of buying an 8 Sleep, any feedback?" And now there are so many threads of people raving about us that I can just reply and say, "Look at this link, look at this link, and look at this link." And maybe they find 40, 50 other customers just sharing their experience.
Yeah, I've seen you're very active on Twitter in a great way. I feel like there's so many people that not only you, but they jump in and they support for you guys. Like they say, "Hey, I've used it." I've also seen a lot of threads where like pretty influential people on Twitter have asked about competitive products or other products in the space, and people would jump in like, why are you not using 8 Sleep? Like, I can't believe it. There's no better endorsement than that.
Yeah. It actually just happened, right? Last week with Tim Ferriss, he posted a tweet. He tweeted about a competitor, and if you go on that tweet right now, probably the first, I don't know, 15 to 20 answers are just people talking about sleep and saying, look, forget that brand. You should try Sleep. And all these are just customers. And that day, we almost double our sales. And we didn't spend a penny. It's just love from our customers and delivering a good product.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I saw that thread and I was like, oh, there's no better marketing than than these people coming in. Another question I like to ask is around like out of the box tactics. I'm fascinated by different things that, individual companies try that might not be in a playbook or a D2C playbook that other companies have tried, and they come out of the woodwork with it and it really works. And one thing I've seen you do, and I was actually exploring something similar, is around like the idea of this health stack. And I have questions later about this as well. And I know you just launched this series, so that was one I thought of. But any other like outside the box things that you guys have tried or even thought about experimenting with?
So we're really playing with by leveraging also on our ads secondary voices, which is working well. So the ads, they don't come from us, or maybe the ads come from the Eat Sleep account, but it's really a video of someone else who's talking about the product. That seems working well. Obviously, the health stack, in order to build thought leadership in the health space, not just sleep. And the reason is that we see sleep as one of the three pillars of health, together with nutrition and fitness. The whole Twitter strategy, right, is working really well for us. And we are building a community there instead of maybe on Facebook as Peloton did.
A lot of what you described is content focused, organic, and it's great because you don't have to pay a ton for it other than your team to help produce the content, and it really returns solid ROI. How do you think about that versus like traditional paid channels, which aren't as sexy and are more measurable, but are considerable cash burns, especially in the early days? How do you kind of think about the ebb and flow between those two?
So our unit economics before and after CAC, they are really good. So we are really profitable at the unit level. And I always think there is a balance, almost an equation between how much you can spend in paid and how much should come through earned media. If you want to have a very good ROI, only paid will never achieve that ROI. And so most of the focus right now is to unlock more budgets to be invested in paid media, we need to generate more revenue through earned media. And that is what has been our focus for the past quarter and what will be the focus for this quarter.
Gotcha. So a question I'm testing on you for the first time, so we'll see how it goes, is kind of this idea of the 10x growth. So what I want to do is, every time a founder comes on here is a snapshot in time where the business is. And so for you, like today, if you think about amount of conversions you're getting per month, what do you think has to happen for 8 Sleep to go 10x where it is today in terms of conversions? Economic factors? Is it a supply chain capacity issue? Is it just marketing? What do you think? What would be your approach to that?
Yeah, it's actually a great question. And I always talk about that with my team. Also, when they set their OKRs, I frame it as focus only on 10xers or only on things that can add a zero. I think it's really brand awareness at this point. I think it's tough, but we are lucky, right? The product has reached a point where customers are happy. We don't have problems in terms of supply chain, so we can scale. And what we have seen is that a very large part of our sales now comes through referrals, is word of mouth. And so the more people know about us, the more people will buy. And that is why our growth keeps accelerating. And people, in our case, also tend to buy the most expensive products. So I'm not super price sensitive in our case. At the same time, conversion rate keeps going up. So the two things, they're both trending in the same direction, and it's all about trust, which I think we're building.
It's a good situation to be in, I'll say for sure. So talk about the competitive landscape a bit. In this segment you're targeting now, most of those people want the best of the best. They want tech enabled. And so that's probably why you're seeing high conversion rate. But if you really think about even maybe 100x from here, at some point the base has to broaden, or just mass consumer people have to shift to kind of digital first. So when I think about the competitive landscape, just for a mass consumer, there's a lot of competitors, right? There's the traditional player, like you go to Macy's and you buy a bed. There's more of like the D2C friendly players like a Casper, et cetera. No free ads to any of those people, but and then you have like functional players like Tempur-Pedic, Sleep Number, who are not doing anywhere close to what you're doing, but have tried to infuse a little bit of technology. And then you have 8 Sleep. So how do you view that landscape today and then evolving over time? Like what's the path for 8 Sleep to take more share from those players?
One of the best things we have heard some of our customers saying is that they call us the Tesla of sleep. And obviously, we would be very proud of being the Tesla of sleep. But I think this analogy helps us to answer to your question. There are a lot of electric cars out there, right? But Tesla, first, is a cult. They have a very clear mission. Second, there are probably the best engineers and definitely the best technology out there. And so while there are other cars doing something similar, the whole package and the vision of where the company can go and also the speed at which it moves is what really differentiate them from any other company. I also think in our case, there is a big difference in terms of DNA between us and a retailer or a Tempur or a Casper, right? These companies are foam companies. In different ways, obviously, they all did a great job and they innovated, but they never innovated in the product, right? That is what we are doing. So we are a data company, and based on data, we improve technology. So you can think of us in a different way, like if probably a closer thing to us is an Apple Watch that tracks your health and wants to let you know when you have a heart attack or you have any sort of disease. That kind of DNA, more than a foam, purchasing a piece of dumb foam in a factory, gluing it together and shipping it boxed.
Right. Yeah, you're a data company, and the modality is a bed. It just so happens that that's the modality today. When you a question that I should have asked earlier, just given the thread, what type of data can you collect today via the bed, and like what specific data points, and what other data points in the future do you think you'll be able to get to with the ecosystem you're building?
So we see everything about your heart rate, in particular heart rate at rest and HRV, which are really important because we can see if you're getting sick because your heart rate at rest changes 4 days before, and through HRV also your recovery. We see everything about your respiration. So in the future, we'll be able to see if you're snoring or if you have sleep apnea. And we also see everything about your sleep. So how much you slept, toss and turns, wake ups. And based on that, we can start creating correlations because a lot of our customers, they use a wearable. And so through Apple Health, we have the data of all your training sessions. And I recently published, I just tweeted last week about some of the data that we have seen that yoga, for example, is one of the activities that helps the most to improve your sleep. We have seen across, I think, 1,000 or 2,000 of our customers, we run these analysis on yoga and sleep, and we have seen that people taking yoga versus doing nothing the same day, they were improving their sleep considerably. At the same time, we have run an experiment with alcohol, and we have been able to see that if you don't drink, or better, if you drink within the 4 hours before going to bed, your sleep will suffer, including your HRV.
It's exciting to think, I had Josh from Levels on here. When you start combining Levels and Whoop and like things like Oura Ring and the Apple Watch, you start combining them with 8 Sleep all together. It's going to be really powerful once the companies have all integrations between.
Yeah.
It's exciting. So I have a background in management consulting. So I had a period where I was traveling a lot, and I imagine for the customers that you have that have 8 Sleep beds at home, it's obviously night and day how much better their sleep is at home. And then when they travel, they're in a hotel. And the reality is, like, you can say like, okay, well, you should spend more nights at home. But if you're going to achieve your vision of getting to the point where people can sleep just 6 hours a night, I imagine you're going to have to dial those people in pretty significantly to make that work over time. And just one night a week or 2 nights a week in a hotel bed would probably throw them off. So what type of things do you tell people today who are traveling a decent amount that want to kind of achieve this higher level of sleep fitness?
So I spoke to a lot of sleep doctors. We also have a scientific advisory board with doctors from Stanford, Harvard, UPenn, and Mount Sinai. And I always made them this question, right? Is with the current knowledge and the current lack of technology, what can I do to improve my sleep, in particular when I'm traveling. So there are a couple of things. So first, consistency is the first answer that all of them they give you. So try to always go to bed at the same time, and more than anything, wake up at the same time, also during the weekend, because otherwise your body doesn't even know if you are in New York or let's say in LA if you wake up 3 hours later every weekend, right? So it's really important for you to wake up naturally without feeling groggy, that you just wake up at the same time. So your body will learn, and there is your biological clock that will just get adjusted. And your body, a couple of hours before you wake up, starts changing its own temperature, accelerates the organ functionalities for you to wake up on time. So, for example, before COVID, I was traveling to the West Coast a lot, probably at least 1 or 2 weeks per month, because all our investors are in Silicon Valley. And when I go to San Francisco, I try to stay on the same time zone of New York. So I wake up really, really early, and I try to go to bed early. So once I fly back, I don't waste a couple of days to just get used to the new time zone.
That's good advice. And for people traveling internationally, good luck.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to like Australia or India, like those are crazy differences. But I agree, you have to get to that point as fast as possible. I want to shift to some of these other questions, more like about your personal experience as a founder. The first one is around the incubator. So you guys were a part of Y Combinator. You know, some people listen to this just because they're fans of brands and they might not be as familiar with accelerators. Other people are aspiring founders and they of course get it and love hearing the tactical advice. Can you just talk through like what was the state of the business when you went into YC? What was the state when you came out? And kind of what were the biggest things that you learned from that experience?
Yeah, so first we got rejected twice before getting admitted into Y Combinator. So, and I think we also became a case study for them in a couple of their presentation where now they want to share the message where, I mean, if you care about getting into YC, don't give up. It's not that because you didn't get admitted the first time, it's not going to happen. So for us, it was great. One of the best experiences and also inflection points for the company. The difference between the first time when we didn't get admitted, the second time we didn't get admitted, and the third time is that the third time by then we launched on Indiegogo, and so we had a crowdfunding campaign proving that we had a lot of traction. By then we sold thousands of units in pre-orders. Then we were really lucky when you joined Y Combinator, at least at the time, you joined a group with 3 partners. And so we had 3 great partners, including Michael Seibel, who is now the CEO, and Gary Tan, who is now running Initialized Capital. And every other week you meet with them, and they really want to see progress. There is no space for bullshit. It's really, okay, did you talk to customers? Did you improve the product? How can you prove it? And did you grow revenue? They're ruthless, but in a very Paul Graham style, where they really let you focus on what matters. Nothing that does not move the needle for revenue or for a better product should be discussed. And then obviously it becomes also being admitted, it becomes the key for when you raise money. In our case, we raised almost $6 million immediately after Y Combinator, and everything happened in a matter of few days because at the time we were a company that did pretty well during the program.
In those first couple of times when you didn't get in, was a big pushback of them that they didn't see the like technology piece of it, although I'm sure you were pitching it then, or was it pretty much just purely traction at that point and they didn't, there was too much uncertainty around the traction?
I think it was definitely around the traction because maybe they were not still convinced about where this product could go. And then we finally got admitted for an interview the third time. Obviously, our product is big, right? Because you need a mattress. And so what we did is we rent a truck and we took a mattress with our technology to the hallway of the Y Combinator building. And then we also installed, we had to connect it to Wi-Fi. We also brought 2 nightstands because our technology also connects to your lights. And when you fall asleep, the lights can turn off. And there are a lot of IoT actions that can happen. And so then we had this interview with Gary, Jessica, Dalton, I think. And I think the interview went well, but probably they still had some doubts. At least this is my guess. But then we said, but yeah, you have to come out, you have to come to the hallway and see our product. And they saw that we brought this mattress and installed a bedroom in 30 minutes before the interview. And I think that was that helped a lot because they really invest in founders. They can get shit done, and that they are resourceful. And hopefully, I think with that we prove to be resourceful.
That was the tipping point for sure. They came out. Gary had a nice little nap on that. He was good to go.
Yeah,
That's
and it
funny.
was so embarrassing because there were other companies there for the interview, right? And everyone was at the computer waiting to get into the room for their interview, and there was this group of guys with a mattress and nightstands in the middle of the entrance of the Y Combinator building.
That's so funny. Yeah, well, those bold actions always work. That's great. So a question I like to ask is around hiring, and I think hiring is the most important thing you can do, and most founders that come on agree in that if you find superstars and empower them and really let them run free, they will drive the growth of your company and do incredible things. So when you think about across the people you've hired, kind of what have been or proven to be the consistent qualities across the superstars that you found?
We have a couple of different things that are also part of our values. The first one is being an owner. So you just tell them, look, I want to do this, and then you let them do their job, and they will figure it out. They will be resourceful. They will overcome problems. Second, usually in a startup in the early days, they're really scrappy. What doesn't work with us is when people come in with a long process that to really start testing a feature, it takes them a month. For us, it's a matter of, okay, you have a day and start shipping an MVP and start talking to customer. And this is something that we learn at Y Combinator. Third, the best ones are the ones that they keep raising their bar, which is one of our values. They keep studying, they keep learning, they keep thinking about what they can do, and they elevate themselves and the products they deliver. These are the key three traits. And then, yeah, it's really overall intensity and focus. That's how I call them. So they focus on the right things. I can help them, but most of the times they're already 90% there. And then they have this intensity where now they're grinders. They just keep pushing and iterating. Most of the times you don't know what you're doing when you're innovating in a space.
And when you interview, how do you suss out those qualities? Do you have like particular things that you go to? Anyone who's going to interview in the future, don't give away the secrets, but like how do you suss that out in an interview?
I think obviously it depends on the seniority. But what I try to always look for is in your previous life, what have you done that proves that you were stellar, that you were great? And I don't care if it was at work, if it was, by painting something or in sport, whatever. But give me a hint that I know that you are unique in this world. Because otherwise, in our environment, after a bit, you wouldn't excel.
That's fair. So you mentioned going to San Francisco, and I'm sure you've gone through hundreds of investor pitches over the years. When you think about those, what's the biggest lesson or some key lessons that you've learned from an investor pitch? Either one that went well, that's something you kind of took with you, or one you got burned on per se, and kind of lessons learned from ones didn't go as well.
So at the beginning, I think Keith Rabois, one of our investors, he didn't like our pitch, and so when I pitched him the company, he didn't like our deck, not the pitch. He didn't like the deck itself, and so I worked with him and Delian to polish the deck quite a lot before we presented it to Vinod, and then Kozla invested, and so it was good and bad. The bad part was obviously the bottom line was this deck suck. But the good thing was that then we worked together to make it really good, and good enough to convince also Vinod to give his green light.
Yeah. If you were kind of talking to a room of aspiring founders or people who had just started, any like wisdom you would share from that process?
The number one thing I would advise for is to really try, and everyone told me, but I didn't follow the advice, but you really need to find investors that first are passionate about your topic, and second, that they are also passionate about how risky the innovation is. Meaning, both Kozla and Founders Fund they bet very heavily on hardcore technologies that can change the world. So they take big risks, and these things can work or they cannot. Which is very different from, I don't know, if you're just a D2C company that you're just innovating on the way you deliver a certain product and you just cut the middle manager. And so being more selective in the type of investors that are a good fit for you is worth it for you because it will save you a lot of time. Otherwise, you talk to a lot of these investors that you might not be a fit for them because they don't invest in hardcore technology and they don't believe in the concept of compressing sleep. You just need to go to the bolder ones. And obviously, is a more limited number of people, but the success rate will be hopefully much higher.
Yeah. Kind of a complimentary question to that. When you think about mentorship and different mentors you've had along the way, what are some of the key pieces of advice that you've gotten from mentors that have helped guide you?
Focus, I would say. That is something that really comes from our board and from Keith, right? You need to really focus on things that can add a zero or they're not worth. So another way you can reverse engineer that concept and start from setting the bar, right? So let's say we don't do any initiative that does not have the opportunity to add 50% in revenue. The reason why it's really important to set the bar is because if you just say, oh, what could we do to increase the revenue? Then you start looking at options that maybe they can add a 5%, but 5% is just a distraction compared to what everything else is going on. And so if you start from the bar is, I don't want to hear any option that does not have an 80% chance or even a 50% chance to increase our revenue by 50%.
That's a really good way to look at it. I've never heard it painted that way, but I agree that the adding the zero concept is critical because to your point, people think too small or their cap is not high enough, right? And then when they end up meeting it halfway, it's like a 2% increase, 3% increase. It's like a waste of time. A question I like to ask is around what you would tell yourself when you started. So with the caveat that you likely would have to go through all the challenges that you went through in order to get to where you are. And a lot of innovation comes from those challenges. But if you could teleport back to the first couple of months when you were starting, what are some things that you would tell yourself?
Two things. First, to start the thermoregulation part much sooner because we started first only with the tracking. But we immediately understood the customer say, okay, all this data is great, but so what? Instead, cooling is the game changer. We actually improve your sleep for you. And second is to have a much higher bar for the first people that I wanted to bring on board, meaning to find people with a much higher IQ in the specific domain expertise that we have to master. I think I was not thoughtful enough about bringing the best people on board. Then some of them joined, but there was luck. I think I could have been much more thoughtful about that. So I would have accelerated, right? We could be where we are today, but maybe it was 1 year ago. And then there was the hardware component, and I didn't know hardware at the time. It was my third company, but the first was from Europe, and the second was not really in Silicon Valley. And so if now I was starting a new company, probably I have so many friends in the Valley that maybe I could put together the founding team in probably a week because are people that I have been interacted with for years as friends, or I already picked their brain for years. And so everything would be so much smoother.
Yeah. And what were some of those roles? Like mostly engineers and on the product side?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, in the early days, we spent a lot of time to figure out hardware. Well, instead now, I mean, the good thing, and I think we're really proud of that, we are reasonably good at that. We have a very strong hardware team, but we started building that team probably 2 years in. During the first 2 years, there was more the founder's mentality where I will figure it out. I will keep fighting until I get shit done. And we got shit done. So it worked, but probably it took us 2 years to do something that an expert would have done maybe in one.
Yeah. So I want to shift to this kind of wellness corner. So I mentioned, and I know you think very aligned in this, I think of health and wellness as a stack. I think combining fitness, nutrition, sleep, mindfulness, all the things together compound. And it's kind of like a 1 + 1 = 3 or more kind of idea. And so what I like to do with founders on the show is I'll go through just a couple of areas of wellness, and I'd love you to just share kind of what you think about them, what your routine is, if you have one for the day, any products and brands that you use. Obviously, 8 Sleep for the sleep will be an easy one. So the first one is morning routine. So walk us through. Do you have a morning routine, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So before COVID, I was waking up at 6 a.m. Now I wake up more around 6:45. I usually have a tea. I read the news. Then before COVID, I was training before going to the office, and then having a coffee right before training. Now sometimes I train instead. I don't know, around lunchtime. So that part changed a bit, but yeah, I usually train every day.
Okay. And then so next piece is kind of nutrition, eating, fasting. Do you do intermittent fasting, and what does that look like? And for the times when you are eating, do you have kind of a fixed diet? What do you stick to?
So I usually fast almost every day, unless except few exceptions. And so usually I do during the week 23 hours fasting, and during the weekend usually I do the 16/8. I'm also on a keto diet. Now it has been 2 years. I'm on a keto, and I like it quite a lot because it helps me control my energy levels during the day. Then I take supplements. I take omega-3. I take magnesium in the night before going to bed. I take NAD, and a bunch of other things for longevity.
So you fast 23 hours in the weekdays. That 1 hour, what do you typically have for that meal?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, the perfect would always be, to have something like veggies and some healthy stuff. There are a few nights where I might have a Chinese night, like a Monday night. There is a cheat day. Usually, I cheat on Friday night when I have is the only cheat day, and I have pizza. Other than that, I just try to eat in the healthiest way possible.
Yeah. I guess people would ask or wonder, like, how do you get all your calories in just one meal? Especially if, veggies are usually like filling, but not super calorically dense. So how do you just kind of over index on fats and proteins? I guess that's where the keto comes in.
Yeah, so proteins. So I don't eat a lot of meat, but I tend to eat some meat. I obviously have some cheese. I tend to have a lot of nuts. I was also eating a lot of berries. Then after using levels, I noticed that they give me quite a spike in terms of glucose. And so I reduced the consumption. I still like them both in terms of taste and for the antioxidants, but I reduced their consumption.
Okay, so the next one's like fitness, working out. So you mentioned you train and now you do it at midday. What kind of training are you doing? And does that vary throughout the week?
Yeah, so most of the times I really do high intensity interval trainings. And so I try to spike my heart rate as much as possible. I have been traveling for a couple of months, so I went back to tennis that I was playing when I was from 14 to 18 years old. So I play reasonably well, and I can play a very high intensity. And I noticed that I can have my heart rate has a very similar behavior when I play tennis. So you can really spike it, and then you stop playing, and then you spike it. The other things I do, I started doing more strength and weights because there are a lot of clinical studies showing the benefits. I do yoga from time to time, not a lot, and then running. But I would say I try to do 80% of the time high intensity interval training.
For sure. The next one, which is your bread and butter, is sleep. So I guess we know what products you use, but how effective have you gotten to the get towards 6 hour goal? Are you there yet? Or are you still kind of sleeping 7, 8 hours a night?
Yeah, so actually right now we're still going in the opposite direction. So I'm actually sleeping 9 hours per night instead of 8. So starting in March is when I started sleeping 9 hours per day instead of 8. And all my biometrics started improving. In particular, my heart rate at rest went down, while instead my HRV went up, and I just feel so much greater during the day.
Gotcha. And then the last one is the kind of content diet. So I know you're on Twitter a lot, engaging with a lot of customers, but are there any newsletters, podcasts that you consume kind of consistently, and kind of more long-term, any books that you would recommend for either entrepreneurship or just any topics you're interested in?
So in terms of newsletter, I read Peter Attia or Attia, and I never know what is the exact pronunciation. And I also read a lot of clinical papers and medical studies. And then Twitter in general, I think if you follow few people, but the right people, is a really good way to get access to a lot of different type of content, but very highly selected. So that works great for me. In terms of podcasts, all the podcasts around entrepreneurships. In terms of books, there is Why We Sleep. That was written by Matthew Walker. Everyone who read that book really understood the importance of sleep in knowing our longevity, in our health and well-being. So I strongly recommend that book. We have no affiliation with that, but I think it does a pretty good job at describing the benefits of sleeping more.
Yeah, I was going to mention collaborations with people like Matthew Walker would probably be unbelievable, right? Because he went on Joe Rogan and I feel like changed a lot of people's perspective on sleep.
Yeah, he's a big advocate for better sleep, and obviously his background gives him a lot of great credibility. And so thanks to him, I mean, he's educating a lot of people to take care of their sleep.
Totally. Cool. 3 questions left for you, and then we'll get you out of here. The first one is around exciting trends. I find, founders typically read a lot and are exposed to a lot of different things, both in their industry, and then of course in analogous industries as well. So if you were to put your customer hat on, or potentially like an angel investor hat, what are some other trends outside sleep fitness that excite you and that would be potentially interesting to pursue?
Yeah, I mean, health in general and predictive health is what I really care about. So there are 2 things I think we can take. There are 2 areas. One, how can we know what's going on in our body? I find that is unacceptable that I don't know what's currently happening inside my body and my organs. So levels is probably one of the first products that is going to that direction. And the second is longevity. I'm really bullish about slowing aging and living longer.
Awesome. All right, final 2 questions for you. We ask these to every guest, so I'm really excited to get your take on these. So the first one is the startup manifesto. So you probably answered a little bit of this throughout some of your other answers, but if you had to write a startup manifesto with 5 of the most important key lessons or pitfalls to avoid when starting out, what would they be?
So pick your co-founders well, because it will be a marriage that will last probably 10 years. Pick the founding team well for the same principle. Focus on 10xers, be intense, and don't be discouraged when things will go bad, because then they will start picking up again.
That's a great list. And then the second question is the nomination. So Josh from Levels actually nominated you. It's your turn to nominate another founder that's either a friend, colleague, or mentor of yours that you would like to see on the show in the future.
Yeah, I nominate Brian Chen. He's the CEO and co-founder of Room. They do an awesome job. They started with phone booths that a lot of offices were using, and now they are expanding. And so they are really reinventing the office, in particular now with all that is going on with COVID, to make sure that we can live and work in safer places.
Yeah, I'm pumped to get him on. Thank you so much for that. Before I let you go, I just want to acknowledge you for a second. I think in listening to the conversation, I've taken a lot away from this. And as I mentioned before, I'm super passionate about this space. So just love hearing the progress and the innovation. If people don't take anything away but this thing, I think you're just a really visionary guy. I think when in listening to your answers, you're super clear and crisp on the messaging, but it's also clear that you have this expansive goal and vision that you're going towards. And I think anytime someone creates a category, it's pretty daunting, and you've had a lot of success. And I just want to thank you again for coming on. And I'm going to continue to be a huge fan of 8 Sleep, and I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And whenever you want to improve your sleep, just ping me and I'll give you a pod.
Will do. Matteo Franceschetti, founder of 8 Sleep. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to that episode with Matteo Franceschetti of 8 Sleep. If you're loving the show and want to support, there's a couple quick things you could do that would really help us out. 1, sign up for our email list at thefounder.substack.com. We know you're busy and might not always have time to listen to the full episode each week, and that's okay. In addition to releasing the episode, each Tuesday, we will send a 5-minute email update with a summary of the weekly episode. We also plan to use our email list for fun giveaways in the future, so make sure to sign up. 2, subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts. If you go to Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star rating and a couple sentence positive review on why the show inspired you. These ratings and reviews are super important and they signal to Apple that they should put our show in front of other people that might like it. 3, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Founder Podcast. Each week we put out teasers, audio clips, and important quotes from the episode. And lastly, check out our website as a mission control for the show. Go to thefounderpod.com. We have a page on there called Special Offers where we link up discount codes from our founders' companies, as well as all the books and resources they recommend. I hope you enjoyed that episode and are looking forward to the next one. Until then, I'm Kallaway, and this is The Founder.